Hello and welcome. This is Head to Head on uatv and I am Oligarchs. Today we're speaking about Ukraine's change and its defense strategy against the aggression of the Russian Federation. There are two aspects to discuss. First, the switch from the anti-terrorist operation to the joint forces operation. And second, Ukraine's strengthening sanctions against Russia. To discuss the expectations and initial outcomes, we welcome to the studio Mykhailo Samus, his Deputy Director for International Affairs at the Center for Army Conversion and Disarmament Studies. Hello and thanks for being with us today. So, Mr. Samus, let's start with the outcomes of the meeting of the National Security and Defense Council, which was chaired by the President of Ukraine, Poroshenko. So, Ukraine has prolonged the sanctions imposed earlier on Russia and also synchronized sanctions imposed by EU and US partners, and mainly they concern the assets of Russian oligarchs and Russian companies developing its business or banking in other countries abroad. So how efficient do you expect these new sanctions to be?
Actually, as we have the so-called law of reintegration, which we have Russia calling like aggressor and occupant, I think it's normally when our Council for Defense and Security call new sanctions, apply new sanctions against Russia. Talking about efficiency and how efficient will be these sanctions, I think it depends on the not only Ukraine, but depends on the how coordinate and how joint will be our activities in this strategy. I mean, together with United States and European Union, because we should understand that Russian economy, very strong linked with European economy because of the several years of strong cooperation in different businesses, especially with, for example, Germany, if you're talking about gas business, and France and other countries.
But this is very understandable, speaking of European countries and the United States, but are there still a lot of Russian corporate assets in Ukraine?
No, actually not. We could say about existing some export-import activities because of the, first of all, oil and gas transit, for example, transit from Russia to Europe. But we cannot say that we have some industry or some military technical cooperation or defense industry joint projects between Ukraine and Russia. I would say it's kind of maybe some financial affairs, maybe financial links, business, like we have several banks connected to Russian banks, but it's not kind of strategic assets. And I think these new sanctions or this decision by our Council for Security and Defense is just a continuing of previous strategy, and I think it could be more and more stronger.
So it's more of a statement as condemnation.
Yeah,
condemnation, basically.
I wouldn't say that it's something new for Ukraine, for example, to make a sanctions, because I repeat, if we have aggressor and the occupant here, so it's against logic that we have some non-sanctions cooperation between Ukraine and Russia, especially if we're talking about the state industry or state companies or even strategic industry like energy or security.
Well, now onto the switch from the ATO to the Joint Forces operation. What does it change on the front line?
First of all, I would say that this Joint Forces operation is kind of new for Ukrainian armed forces approach. I would say it's very close to NATO approaches for organizing operations.
What is it about?
I'm talking about the joint staffs, joint command. It's kind of different from Soviet philosophy, Soviet mentality, military mentality, which Ukraine used before. It means that if we have some operation of area of operation, the commander will get the assets, military assets he needs, especially for this operation. Not all of units belongs to some divisions or brigades like it was in Soviet Union, and Ukraine actually had it before. And what is the main difference now? It's that ATO, or anti-terroristic operation, it was operation by secret service of secret services like SBU, and now we have operation when the military command will issue all of responsibility on all of operation, and SBU will be under command of military staff. So it means that all of activities, National Guard, SBU, other units will be controlled and will be under total control of military staff and commanders. It means that all of decisions of commanders will be in one plan, one timeline, one coordination, and one responsibility.
Yeah, there's going to be one single strategy rolled by one person.
Yeah, of course, all of these units, all of these elements could conduct own operations. Like SBU could conduct anti-terroristic operations in several areas, or only one town and one village. But it will be short anti-terroristic operation like it traditionally should be, not like we had before that for 4 years we had anti-terroristic operation, but in fact we had military conflict with Russia.
Yeah.
So now we have more adequate answer for these challenges.
But is there going to be more clashes and hostilities in the Donbas conflict zone, or what does this mean?
I think it means that from Ukrainian side it will be more strong answer for any provocations, any possible steps by Russians, because before, if you don't have very strict, very direct line of command and control in this operation, like anti-terroristic operation, for Russians it was very easy to make some provocations in one part of the front line and make other steps, aggressive steps in other line, and always it was a problem for commanders to find solutions how to deal with the different attacks against National Guard or against SBU guys or against militaries. Now it will be one coordination center, one military command which could answer more effectively and fast. And I think it could be only stabilization on the front line, because if Russians will see that Ukrainian side will be more and more stronger, of course together with, for example, javelins, which has just arrived to Ukrainian Air Force. Yeah, so it will be just stabilize front line and maybe just push Russia to start negotiations, real negotiations with Ukraine.
So Ukraine will be responding more forcefully on any provocations that are done by the militants. And this was actually the statement of the commander of the Joint Forces Operation, Serhiy Nayev. And I wanted to ask your opinion. Now I want to quote Serhiy Nayev. He said that we proceed from the fact that the implementation of the Minsk Accords does not deprive the armed forces of Ukraine of the right to self-defense, which means that Ukrainian military structures and formations are going to get more aggressive towards the provocations. But at the same time, the commander of the joint forces thinks that the situation on the front line will not be aggravated further. Doesn't this contradict a bit with...
No, absolutely. Actually, what I like to say that this new law of so-called law on reintegration of Donbas, that put very clear legal basement, legal background for this operation. Because before it was very paradoxical situation when, for example, we get in some guys on the battlefield, but from the Russian side, but it's impossible to call them prisoners of war because we didn't have a war, actually, war conflict. We had an anti-terroristic operation.
Officially.
Yeah, so it's kind of, we should used for these guys kind of status of terrorist or some
aggressor.
Just aggressor, but we didn't have any definitions of this in the Ukrainian legal space. Now we have everything, and I think for new commanders and new joint operational staff will be very easy now. I mean, easier than before, much more easier than before, to define all of acts of Russian aggressor and all of acts of themselves, because when you answer for any aggressive acts by Russian forces, you know that by law this is aggressor and they are acting with absolutely according to the international law. Mm-hmm. So it's absolutely illegal for Ukrainian soldiers, because it was paradox before. Ukrainian soldiers on their own soil, they didn't act legally because they didn't have any legal background in Ukrainian legal space.
Okay. Also, you mentioned American Javelins, anti-tank missile systems that will be aiding our soldiers in the joint forces operation, and this sophisticated weapons already arrived to Ukraine, as you mentioned, but there is a criticism from some experts, and I want to clarify a bit of this issue. They're claiming that those javelins were invented a few decades ago. Does this mean that they could be less efficient?
No, I mean that these javelins, they are on the service in United States Armed Forces, and I know that United States Armed Forces never used, the bad weapons, and now this weapon we have in Ukrainian Armed Forces, and I would say that this is anti-tank missiles. They are the best in world now, and for Russians it's a big problem, because now they should know, I think they know, that every missile will kill every Russian tank which approach to Ukrainian side or front line in Donbas. So this is 100% probability that this missile will kill Russian tank. This is, I think it's a pretty good psychological weapon against Russian tank operators who are starting, they move toward front line. Before, yeah, we have Ukrainian missiles, but they are less efficient. They're pretty good, but Javelins is absolutely great in this killing Russian tanks.
Well, then this means that this strengthened the Ukrainian capacities in the defense sector.
Absolutely.
Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but thank you so much for this interesting conversation.
Thank you.
That was Mykhailo Samus, Deputy Director for International Affairs at the Center for Army, Conversion and Disarmament Studies. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned with UATV.